held at the office of the Louisiana Tax Commission at 1051 North Third Street, Suite 223, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The date is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, and the time is 10 a.m. Please call the roll.
Chairman Russell,
Here.
Commissioner Leone,
Here.
Commissioner Romick,
Here.
Commissioner Guidry,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Here.
5 present and a quorum.
Thank you. There being no old business to take up this time, we will move on to the approval of the March 20th, 2024 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there any objection to the motion? Being no objection, the motion is approved. Moving along to item 5 on the docket, consideration of change orders.
Shandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 825 change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 772, place 48 in pending status, and deny 5. Rejection reasoning: for applying a homestead exemption on an LLC, 2 in Cameron, 2 in St. Tammany, 1 in Tangipahoa. Staff requests approval of these change orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 772 change orders, place 48 in pending status, and deny 5 for reasons given by staff.
Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passes.
Shandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 28 prior pending change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve all 28. Staff requests approval of the prior pending change orders.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the staff's request to approve all change orders, all 28.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passes. We're going to move on to the consideration of sales tax cancellations.
Shandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 1 tax sale cancellation in Lafourche Parish due to being erroneously sold. Staff requests approval of 1 tax sale cancellation.
Is there a motion?
I have a motion to accept that 1 change order cancellation.
Here, there's a motion. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passes. We're going to move along to the item 6 on the docket, appeals. Mr. Hoffman.
You'll be testifying in any of today's matters. I'm going to administer an oath. I'll ask you to stand up. So if you're testifying today, go ahead and stand up. I'll administer an oath to all of you, then I'll indicate to you individually to affirm the oath. You will say, "I do," and state your name. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Chris Jablonowski, I do.
Victor Corona, I do.
Thank you. Y'all may have a seat. Appraisers, Luke and Danny, if you'll unmute, I'm going to administer an oath to you. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Luke?
I do.
Danny?
I do.
Mark?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, we'll start first with the appeal of Victor J. Corona versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 2322172-016. You can start first, Mr. Corona.
Thank you. This is a lot. It's 5611 West End Boulevard. It's basically my side yard. There is no street frontage on West End Boulevard whatsoever. There's alley access, and my house faces West End Boulevard. I do not have any access, but I do have access on the side street. But this lot and the other 2 homes that were built has no street frontage at all. It's an alley they come in and leave from. And I thought the assessor's, valuation of the property was quite a bit higher. He was valuing it, like the other block of lots in the area that all had street frontage. This lot doesn't. It's a 40-foot, basically a 40-foot by 120 lot, which is my side yard. I live on the corner. There's no street appeal because you can't see it. You can't decorate. If you build a house, the other two houses are facing the alleyway, which is a pretty alley, but it's still an alleyway. They face the backyards and fences of the street behind us. And I don't know what they're going to do. They built very expensive homes, but when they go to sell them, they're not going to get what they want because they're facing alleyways. I don't think this lot should appraise for what the city appraised it for. I think the valuation of the state appraisal is quite a bit closer to value of the lot. So, thank you.
Orleans Assessor's Office.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Corona is correct in his assertion that there is a alleyway in front of his house, and it doesn't have a full street on the back. Our contention really is that we provided a land rate map as well as an appraisal to the commission and the taxpayer. We're asking for uniformity. Every property in that area is valued at $25 a square foot. The neighbors of Mr. Corona on either side are valued at $25 a square foot. If he does back up to the sound wall, however, both of his neighbors back up to the sound wall, and they are also on $25 a square foot. Mr. Corona is the only one who's appealed. If Mr. Corona is the only value that's less than $25 a square foot, it would create an inequity, and that we would get more appeals in next year. We were asking the commission to support our initial value that was affirmed by the Board of Review for uniformity sake. That the appraisal of the property provided that the commission actually supports a higher value, but we valued the entire neighborhood as a slightly lower value because we don't want to be 100% fair market value based on the sales. And that's really the only issue that we have.
Like to hear from the LTC appraiser.
Mark Gillespie with the Louisiana Tax Commission. I appraised the property located at 5611 West End Boulevard. As stated before, the subject has no street frontage. There's a concrete sidewalk with a 30-foot vertical sound barrier on the west side that binds the property to the west. Ingress and egress on that side is illegal, essentially. It's really a servitude. So the only ingress and egress that the taxpayer has is along the alleyway, which is narrow. I measured it, it's roughly 10 feet wide. So, and my assignment was to determine the market value of this property. And in my opinion, the shape and the utility, essentially the utility of the property is diminished as compared to other properties with typical view and typical residential access. And in addition, I made a view adjustment, a significant view adjustment downward on the comparables in order to recognize the difference between the comps and the subject. And I determined the square foot value to be $16 a square foot, overall value $73,700.
Any questions of the taxpayer of the city of New Orleans or the LTC appraiser?
I would agree with that appraisal. It's more in line with what this lot is. It's kind of a special issue, being that it has no street frontage at all.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question for the taxpayer. So just as I understand, you are behind the sound wall as the ramp coming off of the expressway onto the Florida Boulevard
That's correct.
entrance, right?
That's correct. The sound wall's approximately 30 feet from sidewalk.
So you access this property by coming up to Homedale and through the service alley only,
Ye-
but it
Yeah,
is adjacent
I
to
live-
your,
I live on a corner. I can get into the, property, the side property from the front over my lawn if I want to. I have a trailer back there and a boat back there, and that's how I access it generally. I have to go over my lawn.
thank you. And one question for the Orleans assessor. Um, Again, I understand the desire for uniformity in a neighborhood and other properties, um, even those that are behind that sound wall with the off-ramp are at 25 a square. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. All the, adjacent properties to Mr. Corona's property are also at $25 a square foot.
No further questions.
Any other questions by any commissioner?
I have a question for the LTC. Is this, would you consider this property, if it was on the market, to be buildable as in terms of being in line with the surrounding properties?
Yes, sir. I do believe that it's buildable, although I think the appeal to a knowledgeable buyer would be diminished just because of the frontage. I guess a typical buyer would want to purchase a property that has frontage. You can have a yard, and just the typical residential property aspects that go along with it. But it's definitely buildable. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
So just to that point for the LTC staff, you may not be able to answer this, but if it is buildable, and hearing that all other properties in that neighborhood are at the 25, then what is the difference? I understand a perceived market appeal, but from a neighborhood perspective?
Yes, sir. I think there's 3 or 4 properties along the wall on the west side of the alleyway. And I think it's 3 or 4. And I think there may be houses on all of those. And I don't know what those particular buyers paid for their property. But I guess in an appraiser sense and a potential, like if I were to buy those properties, I would not pay if it were a house or a vacant lot. I certainly would not pay $25 a square foot based on the sales that I found and the adjustments made.
Any additional questions? Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the LTC appraisal for $73,700 of land value.
We have a motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Any objections to the motion? Motion is adopted.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Christopher Jabonowski versus Assessor Earl G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221761101. Mr. Jabonowski, can you speak directly into the mic? Okay,
Yes, how's this?
that's great. Thank you. You can go first.
All right, thank you for hearing the appeal. I've had one-page attachment in my appeal where I explained why I think the Orleans assessment is too high. And it's, in a nutshell, it's the property has been subject to litigation since 2017. And part of that has been settled and is being administered, but there's still one active lawsuit regarding the property. And one of the units has been for sale since 2017 continuously. Another unit went up for sale last year. Nothing has happened. No one really would want to buy into a fourplex where there's active litigation. That's my theory. And we have even offered, when there was some interest in one of the units, to release that unit from the future costs of litigation, and still the deal did not go through. So New Orleans came in at $330,000. I suggested, why not just leave it the same? Because we have no idea kind of what the market value would be given the current situation. And the Louisiana Tax Commission came in less than my proposal. So we have three numbers on the table. To be honest, I don't know what the answer is. So that's why I came today, to find out what happens in a situation like this. The property just can't, it's kind of frozen in a way. So that's all I have to offer the commissioners.
Thank you.
Answer any questions that
City
you
of New
have.
Orleans?
Yes, sir. So the taxpayer is correct. There is a federal housing lawsuit. It is a condominium. The assessor's office valued at $329,600. The taxpayer requested $240,000. We contacted the taxpayer and offered to settle with him for $240,000. He'd rejected that. I just want to get that on record. If he is still amenable to the 240, we were amenable to the 240 yesterday. So we're still amenable to that. If you agree to it, we can agree to it and call it a day. I got a phone call yesterday, and to say that I rejected it is, I guess, true, technically speaking, but to get an offer to settle the day before my hearing is set, after I've rearranged my entire schedule to come over here from Houston to deal with this, I just figured I would come to the hearing and see if their commissioners had anything to offer on what the appropriate value would be, and whether or not, whether or how they assess the tax commissioner's appraiser's appraisal.
Okay, can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, sir. Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the condominium at 6032 Perrier Street. As stated, it's a condominium unit in a two-story complex. Condominium fees are roughly $3,600 a year. And it's under litigation with the Federal Housing Authority. I found 3 comparable condominiums in the area and made the appropriate adjustments to the condos in order to recognize the differences between those and the subject. And I arrived at a value of $200,000.
Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question of LTC staff appraisal. So as I evaluate your comparables, the condition of this property is average, which I see as identical to the condition of the comparables by the assessor's office. And it appears that your comps had an average of price per square of $269 to $437.
Yes, sir.
And it looks like you used an average, you used a number of 191 per square. So it looks like you're already taking in, I guess that's what you are taking into account by coming off of your comps to your price per square. Is that a fair conclusion?
Yes, sir. Yeah, in fact, in that particular area, it's hard to find sales of properties that are in average and even very good condition. Almost all are excellent, and I tried to find some average, obviously, because that's the most comparable to the subject. So I had to make significant adjustments. That would be 20% adjustment per comparable based on its sale price. And then I made the square foot size adjustments. I believe there's a car parking, storage adjustments, and a few extra amenities here and there. And that's how I arrived at my value of $200,000.
And for the assessor's office, it looks like you also had an average assessment, but your comps had a market of 403 to 516 as a high, but you're only assessing at 345. So you also took into account to get to your 329.6.
Yes, sir. And that is the correct.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Any additional questions by the commission? Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the taxpayer's request of $30,900 on the land, $209,100 on the building, a total of $240,000 on the property.
I have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Now we'll take up the appeal of Anita L. Eunice versus Assessor Earl G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221771010.
Thank you very much for your time. And thank you very much for your time and allowing us to come and present our case. I provided copies. Basically, what's going on for our house, it's an average or below average, because after the hurricane have damage, and we provided picture of the damage in the roof and the fence. Also, for the last maybe 8 years, the road is all holes. And honestly, when I drive, I go around big street to avoid the holes, because about 8 years ago, I got 2 flat tires from those holes. So I have to drive around. And they never fix the street. I went to the internet and look at our house lately, and I found this value at $306,000 at Redfin. And I provided copy of the internet price. Because when we built the house, like we built it for $100 a foot, and you find maybe a house next door or next block, maybe they built it for $100 per foot, depending on the quality of the material. So basically, our house is not that high quality, like 400 or 500 per square foot. So basically, when you look at the roof and the fence and even the steps, and even nobody want to insure our house because the roof is too old and need to be replaced. And when you look at the street quality, our neighbor want to sell his house. He spent 6 months, nobody will buy it because of the street quality. Then his own company bought it from him and moved to Alabama. So we think like a 300,000, maybe 310 is fair value for the house. Yes. I think like for the condition of the house and the street and neighborhood and the quality of the material is like $300,000 or 306, as the real estate company have it on the internet to sell. And usually when they advertise at 306, the seller will go down maybe 5–10% to be able to sell it. That's the internet price, is the 306,000.
New Orleans Assessor's Office?
Oh, yes. So the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office initially valued the property at $393,500. The Board of Review affirmed it. Information provided to the Board of Review by the taxpayer was part of the insurance. The Board of Review affirmed our value and did not make an adjustment because the home insurance declaration provided by the taxpayer, the dwelling value exceeded the building value that we had it at. The Orleans Assessor's Office performed a fee simple appraisal. We came out roughly the same value as the tax commission staff appraisal value. The only difference that we have between our value and the staff value is condition adjustments. I believe they came in at $340,000. We were at $393,500. We're roughly in the same ballpark. We feel that the property should not be valued based on a Zillow estimate, which is nowhere near as accurate as a fee simple appraisal. Both fee simple appraisals by our office and the staff's appraisal, we feel are both more indicative of fair market value because they're more comprehensive and specific to that property, as opposed to a generic internet valuation, say from Zillow or Redfin or something of that nature. In all honesty, I offered to settle with the taxpayer for the $340,000 prior to the hearing, and it was rejected by the taxpayer.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, sir. Mark Gillespie with the Louisiana Tax Commission. I appraised the property at 114 28th Street. Spoke with the taxpayer, and he informed me that the property we determined it to be in average fair condition due to shifting foundation issues. It has some unrepaired Hurricane Ida roof damage and some ongoing deferred maintenance. He also indicated that the road, and which I could see as well, the road is in very poor condition. So I did some market research and I found 3 sales that are actually on the subject street, which is 114th Street, right there near the subject. So all of the comparables have the same road frontage conditions. So I put it in average fair condition, and of course, in that area, all the sales are either in excellent or very good condition. So I had to make significant adjustments. And 2 of the sales one is on either side of the subject. In fact, if you look at my report, if you look at the photographs of sale 1 and sale 2, on the left side of sale 1 is the subject, on the right side of sale 2 is the subject. So they're right there next to it. I made the appropriate adjustments to the comparables and determined the market value to be $340,000.
Any questions by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Russell.
Yes,
So,
sir.
Mr. Russell, just a point of clarification, the appraisal that was done by the taxpayer was not one that was done physically by an appraiser there, such as yours. Am I correct in saying that?
I can attest to that. I don't believe that it was, but I can attest to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, excuse me, to accept the LTC staff appraisal for a total of $340,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Motion is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Eunice.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Up next, we have the appeal of Russell J. Wilcox versus Assessor Earl G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-72025. No taxpayers present.
We'll hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office. Mr. Russell.
Yes. One second, sir. All right. So the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office initially valued the property at $351,700. It was affirmed by the Board of Review. We provided a fee simple appraisal of the property. The individual subject analysis came out at $351, which is slightly higher. We're asking that the tax commission uphold the Board of Review's value of $351,700. I think the main issue for this property is condition issues. Now, the tax commission's staff appraisal comes in at $300,000. We don't feel that that is an accurate indicator of value. We have some issues with the appraisal. The tax commission's appraiser has it listed in fair condition. However, there's no photos depicting damage on the inside of the property, nothing that would say that it's fair condition that has been supplied with the appraisal. There's a photo of the front of the property, which looks like it has been repaired. It's a pink house. It looks like it's recently been fixed. It's an average to good condition. Furthermore, the tax commission staff appraiser says that he spoke to the taxpayer. One side is currently rented out, and the other side he's in the process of trying to rent it out. To me, that doesn't seem like that's fair property. If it was fair, he wouldn't be able to rent it out. So we've asked the commission to uphold uphold the Board of Review's value of $351,700.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Good morning, Luke Brewer with Louisiana Tax Commission. I performed an appraisal on 822 Roosevelt. I formed the market approach and income approach. I did list the property in fair condition. The basis being pictures provided to me by another member of the Louisiana Tax Commission from a previous appraisal. I did not attach those into the appraisal report, and I probably should have. to give better understanding for all parties involved.
If I may just address that real quick, sir. So your documentation, the photos that were not supplied in the appraisal came from a previous tax commission member that were older photos that are not necessarily the current condition, and you did not verify yourself that those photos are accurate or current. Is that correct?
I spoke with the appellant, and they said that the condition had not changed. I'm making the extraordinary assumption that the condition is still what it was based on those photos and based on an exterior inspection.
Sure, but we can't date the photos, and you didn't verify personally that that condition is accurate and current. Is that correct?
I believe that's fair. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any questions from the commission to the taxpayer, the LTC appraiser?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Based upon your appraisal, your final value reconciliation, you're actually showing a value of 356, but you are presenting something less than that.
Yes, sir.
for, and it appears that the price per land is what we know of that neighborhood of 25 a square. Would you say that the price per square for that condition in relation to neighboring properties is within reason?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Okay, any other questions by the commission?
I have a question for the LTC appraiser. When I'm looking at your income approach, where did you come up with your market value rent? Did you just use what the property would rent for, 1,100 if you had them both rented, or did you actually use the market rent?
I extrapolated the current rent of one unit to the other. He had claimed that he had tried to lease the other unit for $1,500 a month, but could not do so. I believe it's reasonable that the adjoining unit would be rent for around the same amount at $1,100 a month if we assume that both units are similar in size and condition. And then I developed a gross rent multiplier to determine the value based on the income approach.
No further questions.
Any other questions by any members of the commission? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the parish assessor's office, total of $351,700, $83,700 for the land, $268 for the improvements.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion is approved.
All right. Next, we have the appeal of Timothy Biven versus Assessor Earl G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-72040. The taxpayer is not present, but he did email and state that he's in agreement with the LTC value.
New Orleans Assessor's Office?
Yes. So the assessor's office initially valued the property at, let's see, $1,007,500. There is a square foot discrepancy with this property. The square footage that we have is 3,465. The square footage used by the Louisiana Tax Commission is 3,099. We did a field inspection and I found that our square footage was incorrect. A recalculation of that value would put it at $901,000, which is right in line with the was in 10% of the board reviews. I'm sorry, with the tax commission staff appraisal value.
We'll hear from the LTC appraiser.
Yes, good morning. Luke Brewer with the Louisiana Tax Commission. I did an appraisal on 5625 Rosemary Place, developed a market approach. The subject property had been previously measured by a member of the Louisiana Tax Commission, and I was provided a copy of that sketch, which was included in the appraisal report. My findings after performing a market approach of the subject property was $790,000.
Any questions from the commission?
So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, that with the assessor's reappraisal of 901,000, the land would still be at 262.5, and the difference to the improvements?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Any additional questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to accept the LTC staff appraisal of 790,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Motion is adopted.
Next, we have the appeal of Mr. Labakari versus Assessors Earl G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-73240.
Assessor's office?
Yes. This is 930 Poland. The assessor's office took a look at the property. We initially valued the property at 397,000. The tax commission's appraisal comes in at 302,500. There are photos in the appraisal that were attached that show that the property has condition issues. There's holes in the ceiling and wall and floor. We can't verify the photos. However, as they're included in the actual appraisal themselves, we have no, we can't also not, look at the photos. So we have no issue with the tax commission staff appraisal based on the condition issues that we found.
Are there any questions for the LTC appraiser? Do I have a motion?
A motion to accept the LTC staff appraisal for 115,200 on land, 187,300 on improvements, total of $302,500.
Thank you.
Mi-
We have a
mi-
motion. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I had a question and if I missed that, I apologize, but I'd like to have discussion just for clarification. So with that said, LTC staff, you have an average rating with comps of 105 to 194, and it looks like you used 107 as a square on the improvements. Is that taking into account the damage that was mentioned by the parish assessor's office?
Yes, sir. In fact, if you look on my report on page 4, you'll notice the about three-quarters of the way down on the condition of the 4 columns. The first column is the subject, and the condition is in average and fair condition. Essentially, because the property has some deferred maintenance, and I think it had antiquated knob and tube electrical system, and there were some foundation shifts that I found. The walls were cracked. So what I did is I found 3 sales. The first one in average condition, the other 2 were in fair condition. So I made the appropriate adjustments in order to recognize the differences between the subject and the comparables based on condition. And then I made a square foot size adjustment, car storage adjustment, and that's how I arrived at the total value for the sales approach, 268,000. But the let's see, the overall value of the property was 302,500.
And for the assessor's office, it looks like you did a similar adjustment because your average on your sales were 243 to 285, but your actual assessment is only at 142. So there's looks like there's a similar thought, but just a different conclusion as to what that adjustment would be per square.
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the LTC staff appraisal value. Is there any more discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Motion is approved.
Next, we have the appeal of Gail Labakari versus the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-221-73254.
City of New Orleans?
Good morning, Commissioners. This one's kind of a weird one. There's an age freeze on this property. So regardless of whatever value the property is set, that age freeze is frozen the assessed value. Something that we haven't had come up before, so I just wanted to give the commissioners a heads up on it. This property here, we initially valued the property at $409,900. The tax commission appraisal came in at $300,000. We provided an appraisal that supports the $409,900, which was our prayer. The thing that complicates it is whether or not this is a legality challenge of having an age freeze, being able to lower the value or not.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the property at 922 Poland. It's right near the previous property that we spoke of in the last appeal. Average to fair condition based on the same issues as the other property. I found, in fact, I used the same sales that I used for the other property, average and fair condition, made the appropriate adjustments, used the income approach as well, and arrived at a value of $300,000.
Mr. Hoffman, I have a question. Elaborate a little bit on the age freeze and what that restrictions are.
So as I understand it, the assessor in New Orleans changes the fair market value, but does not change the assessed value for frozen property. So you all can adjudicate the fair market value, but it doesn't affect the assessed value that's frozen pursuant to the age freeze or the special assessment level that this taxpayer has. You can still, it'd be no different if you were adjudicating the value of a church. It has a fair market value, even if it's subject to an exemption. So y'all aren't adjudicating the assessed value, which is subject to the freeze. You're simply adjudicating the fair market value. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference in terms of tax dollars. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yes, sir.
Is there any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, just to further understand that, so the assessment, I'm not sure when the age freeze went into effect, but per your website, I only took what the value of the land in the building was from 23 and 22 as a point of comparison, not fully understanding when the age freeze went into effect and when the actual tax assessment of what this individual would pay was in play. But the combined values for 23 was 186,000, for 22 is 181. But be that as it may, what we are deciding upon today is only the fair value, not what the taxpayer pays.
Yeah, correct. You're ruling on what the fair market value is. The reality is it will not affect the tax bill because the taxpayer is entitled to a special assessment level, and so the assessed value is unchanged. If you look at the assessor's website, the market value and the assessed value is not necessarily the same. In fact, the way the assessor lists the values that are even changed by the board of review or by your decisions, the assessor will keep the fair market value the same and show the reduction in the assessed value. And my understanding is he does the same thing with age freezes, that the fair market value is the market value. The assessed value memorializes the freeze.
So the impact to the assessor then is if I were this individual that bought this house, I'm no longer eligible for an age freeze. It would theoretically be on the market value that's on the books of the assessor's office.
He's only the only way to get rid of an age freeze is to either sell the house, do substantial improvements, or pass. There are situations where we've had taxpayers come in, and if there's a fair market value ruling, it's lower than the value, then we obviously advise them to get rid of their freeze and then refreeze it at the lower value, but that's neither here nor there.
But again, for your records, if I were to buy this property from Ms. Livacari, then I would imagine at very first pass, based upon what I paid for that property, let's say it's whatever it is, but initially that value would be at the 409,900 if that's what the commission so chooses.
So
Yes, sir.
as I appreciate it, because you pay your taxes prospectively in Orleans Parish, that when you purchase it, the taxpayer is already going to pay the tax bill at the frozen rate. Now, when the assessor picks up that sale, he's going to send you your new tax bill at whatever the fair market value is. But the purchaser also would have the right to challenge it, assuming it's within the challenge period.
Understood. So just I apologize, Mr. Chair, but just for point of clarification from LTC staff, in a similar mindset, your rating on the property at hand was average. Your comps had a range of 105 to 192, but you used 97, so even less than what the comps had shown for an adjustment.
Well, the subject is an average fair condition, but and essentially what we do there is we recognize that, the average, of course, we all know what average is, but it's a little lower because of the condition, of course. So we make significant adjustments to the comps, and whatever that number comes in at, I'm not sure what the square foot number is, but and that's essentially that's how we arrive at that number.
And for the assessor's office, just for the record, your average rating brought 231 to 272 and used 159.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Any questions from any other members of the commission? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to go with the LTC staff appraisal of 128,300 for the land, 171,700 for the improvement, for a total of 300,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Yes. Next, we have the appeal of DeJuan F. Hammond versus Assessor Earl G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221740115.
Assessor's office?
Yes, sir. So the assessor's office initially valued the property at $354,800. It was affirmed by the Board of Review. The subject is a two-family dwelling in the Central City South neighborhood. We performed a fee simple appraisal that came out lower than our initial value. I apologize. The prayer that was sent to the commission had a typo on it, had the wrong number. The value that it should be based on the appraisal that was performed by our office was a $108,500 for the land, $207,500 for the building, for a total fair market value of $316,000. We initially sent it at 360. There was a one that was left off, and apologies to the commission. The issue that we have really is, I'll pull my notes up. The taxpayer didn't provide any documentation to show that the property is in poor condition. It's currently listed in MLS number 2427349, that they have the property in excellent condition. Therefore, we feel that the value should be slightly higher than the tax commission staff appraisal value of the 295, but less than our initial valuation of 354,000. We feel that 316 is a good number for this, considering that the property is being leased or offered on market for a higher condition than the commission's appraisal.
Can we hear from the LTC appraiser?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Danny Blanchard, appraiser for the Louisiana Tax Commission. I performed an appraisal of the property, estimate the fair market value of the fee simple interest of 1719 7th Street in Uptown New Orleans. Did a market value, we employed two value approaches, specifically the sales comparison and the income approaches. With regards to the former, we found three sales. We presented the ones that are most similar. They range from $365,000 to $435,000. After making some adjustments for measurable differences, the adjusted values range from $286,150 to $313,000. So we concluded a value of $298,000 for the sales comparison approach. We also employed the income approach. We found adjusted rents range from $1 to $118 per square foot. We concluded a market rent of $2,206 or $101.15 per square foot. Also looked at the gross rent multipliers. They range from 133 to 160. We concluded a gross rent multiplier of 133. So using those two factors, market rent and market gross rent multiplier, arrived at a value via the income approach of $293,000. Gave most weight to the sales comparison approach because it's most indicative of market participants. So again, we had a market value, 298, income approach, 293. We concluded a value, fair market value of 295, which 108,500 is attributed to the land, and the remaining 186,500 attributed to the building.
Any questions for the LTC appraiser or the city of New Orleans?
I have one question, Mr. Chair, relative to the taxpayers' request and your 316,000 value. I'm not sure if your records are easily accessible, that you would show that the assessed value from 2023 was 311,000 combined, pretty much in line with where your 24 assessment is prescribed.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I ask one question, if it pleases the commission of the staff appraiser? The income approach, you stated that you used the market value. Did you use the actual value for the that the property is being rented for?
The property was one of the units was not rented. They actually it's occupied by the owner's mother, reportedly occupied by a family member. So no rents are being collected on one of the units. So to answer your question, we did not. We're not able to use the combined rent of two units. But if I may respectfully speak to the current listing, the effective, I think it's important to note the effective date of this appraisal is 1/1/23. So if there's a current listing, it was not listed as of the effective date of this appraisal. So it's entirely possible that some improvements were made since the effective date of this appraisal.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions by the commission?
City of New Orleans, give me a breakdown of that 316,000, how much land and how much improvements?
108,500 for the land, 207,500 for the building, total fair market value 316. 207,500, sir.
Any other questions by the commission? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the parish assessor's office, 108,500, 207,500 for a total of 316,000.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Please note that the remainder of our docket has either been settled or withdrawn.
Are there any other matters to come before the commission? Being none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion is adopted. We're adjourned at 10:54 a.m.